Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So, decided to shoot this video based on a question that was asked of me by one of my viewers. And that question was, do I finance my cars? And the quick answer is, it depends. About half the cars that we've bought in the last handful of years we financed, and the other half we've paid cash for. So it depends on a handful of things, and my circumstances are different than other people's circumstances. Also, you've got paying cash, you've got financing, you've got leasing, and there are principles related to each that may make one or the other more attractive to you. So right now we currently own 4 cars. I'll start from the least to the most expensive. This car that I'm driving now, which is a 2014 Smart Electric Drive. This car was purchased used for $5,000, and we bought it from my daughter, just paid cash for it. Second car would be my wife's Ford Fusion all-wheel drive, and that car, I believe it's stickered for $32,000. We got it on an X-Plan discount for like $29,000. We did finance it, although we probably could have squeezed that much cash together to pay cash for it had we wanted to, and I'll get to why we didn't shortly. Next car would be my 2018 long-range rear-wheel drive Tesla Model 3. That car was with autopilot, I think $54,000, $54,000 or $55,000. We financed that, which we had to, didn't have that much money set aside. Lastly, the most expensive car that we own, now it's not the most we paid for a car, but the most expensive sticker price would be our 2019 BMW M240i convertible. That car is all-wheel drive. It's got a lot of options. That car stickered for $59,000, $59,800, so basically just shy of $60,000. And but we got it very, very discounted down because it had 4,000 miles on it. It was still considered a new car because it had never been titled. It was a dealer program vehicle, an executive loaner for when executives from BMW would come in from Germany. They would lend out that car. So that car had 4,000 miles on it. I think we paid $47,500, $48,000, something like that for it, and we financed that car also. So first I'll get to our buying philosophy when it comes to cars, and that philosophy is, first off, we do a huge amount of research on what's going to suit our needs. Now that may seem like an obvious thing, but I talk to a lot of people that vehicle purchases are an impulse buy. In fact, that's oftentimes why you see a car with 3,000 or 4,000 miles on it being sold at a drastic loss, because it turns out that was an impulse buy for that individual, and now they have to unload it because either it's too expensive or it really doesn't suit their needs or whatever. It was an emotional purchase. So for us, we research a car, and generally we research a car for months before we buy it. Months to even years. Generally a couple years before we know we need a car, we start keeping our eye out for what's out there and what we might want and what will suit our needs, and then several months before we buy, we kick it into overdrive and put a lot of time into researching it. So it's been a long time since we've had a car that didn't perfectly suit our needs. So we research it. Next, we will only buy if it's an extremely good deal. Extremely good deal. Like in this case, this car, most of the Smart Electric Drives that were this age, in this condition, with this many miles, were $6,600 to maybe $7,200. That just seemed to be the normal price. We paid $5,000 for this one. So my wife's Ford Fusion all-wheel drive, great car, and that was bought through a friend of mine who is a designer at Ford out in California. He got us an X-Plan discount on that car. Let's see here, I also got an X-Plan discount on my previous Ford, which is a Ford C-Max hybrid. My Tesla Model 3, the car was being released right at the time I'd need a work vehicle. I drive 44,000 miles a year on average, and so the gas savings would cover the majority of the cost of the car. So we ordered that car online. Also, my wife's backstepping here. My wife's Ford Fusion, when we were at the dealer to buy that car, they asked, do you want to finance it? And like I said, we could probably have squeezed up enough to pay cash for it, but it would have been a stretch to do so. And I said, well, I guess I'd like to finance it. And they said, how much do you want to put down? So I asked, I said, well, what can we put down? So they said, let's run your credit. So they ran our credit. It was whatever, 859 or something. It was really, really high. And so they came back and said, with your credit, you qualify for an additional $1,400 cash back from Ford and 0% financing, both. I'm like, whoa. So we not only got it $3,400 off of the $32,000 price tag, but then Ford took $1,400 more off, and they said it's 0% financing. And I looked at the salesman and I said, he goes, how much you want to put down? I said, at 0% financing, I'll put down as little as possible. So he laughed, and I said, but I don't want to be upside down on the loan. So I ended up putting $2,500 down on the car. We calculated it out, and at the rate we were paying down on it, we would never be upside down on it. But so the financing of that car, it would actually have been, I don't want to say dumb, but it wouldn't have been necessarily the best decision to finance that car, because there was no interest. The loan wasn't costing us anything. But we did pay extra on that car. We paid it off very early. It's been paid off for years. And so we bought that car, paid extra on it, even though we didn't need to pay extra to save financing charge. We just wanted to have that title in hand. It's my wife's car. I wanted her to have a car that was still in new condition with the title in hand. So we did that there. With the Tesla, I couldn't pay cash for it, but our credit was so high, our interest is 3.25%, and that is through Chase Bank. Tesla arranged the financing through Chase, and ultimately I put $10,000 down on that car. I put the $1,000 reservation amount down. Then I had to put $2,500 down to confirm my order, so that was $3,500. And then the balance I needed to put down, the bank required a 10% down payment on the balance that was being financed, which was $6,000 some. So that's right at $10,000 essentially that I put down on that car, financed the rest. And I actually financed that car for 6 years, which may sound foolish, and normally I would say financing a car for a long duration is foolish, but here's my logic behind financing that car for a long term. Was that I wanted to know that I had as low a payment as I could get. And it's still a high payment. It's $776 a month. But I knew I would pay far more on the car than my normal payment would be. In fact, I'm paying almost triple. We've been paying $1,900 a month on that car, and to try and pay it off as quickly as possible. Not just to save interest, but I'd like it paid off while it's still a really nice car, so I'm not forced to have to go from loan to loan to loan to buy another work vehicle right as it's paid off, which is what I did with the C-Max. That car, right as I paid it off, I got the Tesla, so we stepped from one loan to the next. So we're paying that car off early, but I wanted to know that being self-employed, my income is variable, and I wanted to know that if work was slow and finances were tight, that I wasn't obligated to some $2,000 car payment, even though I could afford that. So that's our philosophy there. And then the BMW, we financed that as well. I think we put down, well, we traded in our, we had a 2017 Honda Civic Si. We traded that car in, and that became our down payment. So that car is financed as well for, I don't know if it's 5 or 6 years, but we pay extra on that car as well. So, so right now we owe on our house, but we owe very little. We actually, very little. We could almost pay off our house with what we have in our savings account right now. So that's good. We owe, I don't know, 30 some grand on the Tesla. So not a huge amount there. We owe 30 something thousand dollars on the BMW. So we really don't owe much at all. Our total debt load is about 2/3 of the value of our house. If you figure all of our loans combined, our mortgage, our cars, we don't have any credit card debt. I have no business loans, nothing like that. No personal debts to anybody. So if we were to figure all of that combined, we live in a little townhouse, and yet we could, if we wanted to refinance our townhouse, we could pay off all of our debt and mortgage, car payments, everything, and still have about 30% equity in our house. So our debt level is pretty low. Oh, we do have a rental house also, and there's a debt on that. I'm not including that here because that's a partnership with a friend of mine, so this is personal debt, but that's the only other thing. So our philosophy is an interesting one, and I would like to pay cash for every car I can because cars are a depreciating asset. However, if the interest is 0%, then financing it isn't necessarily a bad thing because you're using somebody else's money. Now, where this gets a little bit tricky is if you're undisciplined in your finances, and we were for years, or I don't want to say we. My wife was probably better at money, or probably she was better at money handling than I was early on in our marriage. I was an idiot. So, but now we're both pretty good at money handling, and I don't want to say I'm better than she is, but I've probably grown more than she has in that area. I don't know, take that as you will. But now we're good at money handling, so I don't mind financing something out because, in fact, for me, I'm far better at paying off a loan than I am at just taking extra and throwing it in savings. So for me, debt actually works as long as it's 0% or incredibly low interest rate, because a debt is a catalyst for me to work and push to pay it off. If I have no debt, I go, well, I can put a little into savings. And it's not a catalyst for me. So I've learned to make debt work for me. Also, debt is totally fine if you have enough to pay it off. Now, why would you take out a loan if you don't need it? If you're buying a $30,000 car and you could pay $30,000 in cash for it, why would you finance it? Just buy it outright and start saving. Well, there's a bunch of reasons, tons of reasons. One would be emergency fund. If you have 30 grand in savings, you're buying a $30,000 car. Now you're essentially you're out of resources. What if your furnace goes out or some other major thing, and you need $5,000? Now you don't have access to it. You'd have to use a credit card or whatever to do that, or finance the furnace through the furnace company or whatever it is. And that's not a wise decision. So you need to have an emergency fund. Number two, it's not just an emergency fund, but it's good to have a ready funds available, not just for an emergency, but what happens if you stumble across something. So with this car, if we didn't have the 5 grand, in fact, it wasn't even in our savings account, it was just cash. We had a cash envelope there with more than $5,000 in it, not even in our savings account. It's just a slush fund sitting there. Well, all of a sudden this car came available and I had to have the ready funds. They needed the money and we wanted the car, and so I had the extra sitting there. Here you go. There it is. So we like to know that we not only have an emergency fund, but that we have extra funds available in case there is something, a special purchase that you stumble across. I'll buy most anything if the deal is good enough. I feel like the Pawn Star saying, I'll buy anything if I can make money on it. Well, I'm kind of that way. I've had people contact me with oddball stuff. You want to buy such and such? And I'm not rich, but I've got a few grand here and there that I can part with. Well, I've had people contact me, do you want to buy such and such from me? I'm in a spot. Well, oh man, that's a $2,000 item. You only want $800 for it? Man, I can fire sale that thing for $1,300 or $1,400 if I'm willing to wait a week, but they need the money right now. Excellent. I'll take it. Here you go. In fact, in my wallet, I generally have several $100s hidden, so that's another thing. We treat our finances in layers, and what I mean by that is, so in my wallet, I've always got 20 or 30 bucks in loose bills, but then I've got a couple $100 folded up and kind of hidden inside my wallet. And then beyond that, we have a cash envelope at home. There's generally several $1,000s in there. We also have a cash envelope budgeting system that there's a couple $1,000 in at any given point. And this is all stuff that's locked up, hidden and locked away. But then we have our savings account. Then we've got a couple different accounts. Well, so basically, and then we have equity in our house and that kind of thing. Well, so what we do is we have layers. So the first layer is just the cash in my wallet. Second layer is the other cash, a couple $100 bills that I hide in my wallet, and it's not hidden. It's just not easily accessible. I don't want it to fall out, but I have that with me in case there's a deal I stumble across. There are times that I go to a garage sale or something, and at that garage sale, there's a $1,000 table saw for $200, but they need cash right now. I leave, I go home, I go back. I'm back in 10 minutes. It's sold. Oh, I am so tired of that kind of thing happening. Or I go to an ATM machine and it doesn't work, or my debit card doesn't work or something, and that happens. I bought tires for a car, $400 and some. My debit card didn't work. Thank God I had like $600 in cash hidden in my wallet, so I was able to take that out. So it's a convenience thing. Every layer that we have is a little bit bigger than the layer before it and a little bit harder to get to. The cash folded up in the back of my wallet is harder to get to than the loose cash in front. The cash that we have locked away at home is a little bit more than I have stuffed in my wallet, and it's a little bit harder to get to. Then our savings account has more than the cash sitting at home, but it's a little harder to get to. So you see what I mean? How every layer is a little bit harder to get to. So we also, anytime we get a windfall, if we get an escrow return, or we had a delivery truck backed into our garage door and dented it, I repaired the door, but they paid me $1,450 some for the door. I've been rear-ended a bunch of times. Every time I get rear-ended, I weigh in my own brain, is it worth fixing the car, or should I take the money that the repair amount is and just put it in savings? And I've done that a couple of times. Any windfalls go into savings. So now my philosophy on leasing, personally, I don't like leasing vehicles, but it can be a tool that works well in certain instances and for certain people. So leasing is, I've heard people say that, and I've even said this at times, that leasing is long-term renting and you'll never own the thing. And that's kind of true. And I'll give the negatives first, then the positives. The negatives to leasing is, if you do end up wanting to keep the car long-term, leasing a car, then buying it out at the end of the term is by far the most expensive way that you could ever buy that car. Also, with leases, you're limited in miles, you're limited in things you can do to the car if you want to do any modifications or that to it. So, and I have this pride of ownership thing, this sense of, I don't want to say possessiveness, but I want to know that what I have is mine. It's not the leasing companies. That's also part of the reason I pay stuff off early. I want it to be mine, not the bank's. It's mine. So, so I don't like leasing, but it can be beneficial. A couple cases in point. Realtors tend to lease vehicles. Main reason for that is they want to have a really nice, very new model car to be driving clients around in. And though realtors drive frequently for their work, they usually don't drive a huge number of miles. So leases work for them. They get a brand new car every 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, whatever their lease term is. They get a brand new car, and their payment is less than a payment on a new car. And also, they're people that use it for like realtors and that kind of thing generally aren't going to modify the car. They might put a magnetic sign on the door, but that's about it. So it works for them. There's also certain tax benefits to leasing. Now, for me, I purchase a vehicle, and for my business, if I buy a vehicle for business use that isn't going to see very many miles, I will write off the expenses. But if the mileage deduction is going to be higher based on all the miles I'm driving, then the purchase is, then for that vehicle, I'll write off the miles. So for my Tesla, I write off miles because the operating expense is far, far lower than the deduction I can get for the 44,000 miles a year I drive. So that's what I do there. But any EV I buy for the channel, in fact, I'm considering writing the purchase price of this car off, but maybe not. This is more for my son. But any other vehicle I buy for the channel, just to get content for the channel, I will write off the purchase price of that vehicle, not the miles, because it's probably not going to see enough miles. The purchase price will probably be a larger deduction than the miles would be. So there's a lot of different things that swirl together to form, you know, what my philosophy is regarding financing. But basically, if it's an inexpensive car that I can easily buy with half of our savings or less, and especially a used car, the interest rate's going to be higher, I may as well pay cash for it. But if I can borrow the money for free, and or it's going to be more money than I have in savings, or too large a percentage of my savings, I'll finance it, which is another thing too. We have financed cars by using a 0% credit card, 0% for 12 months, and we'll buy the car on that 0% card as long as we know for sure we can pay it off at the end of the 12-month term. And here's why that's critical. Interest doesn't just begin at the 12 months. A lot of people get into this trap with rent-to-own places like furniture places and that. What happens is, let's say you've got 12 months same as cash. If you pay it off within the 12th month, you're golden. But if you go to month 13, what they do is they don't start accruing interest at that point. What they do is they take the full term that you've owned that purchase, and they load all of that interest. So on month 13, you end up with 13 months of interest all at once. If you had just paid it off a month earlier, there'd be no interest. But all of a sudden, one more month and you have 13 months of interest. That's usually the way that works. So you have to be extremely careful of that. So anyway, there's a lot more I could say, but this video is already getting too lengthy, and I apologize for that. So anyway, those are just my thoughts on this. Much of it is not just my thought, it's reality, and some of it is my own opinion and based on my life circumstances. So if you guys have any questions about this, by all means ask. I'll probably do a video on the exact finances of my car. I did one, gosh, about a year ago, but it wasn't all that detailed. It was just basically, hey, here's some simple numbers for you. But now that I've owned it for a period of time, I can get into exact numbers, and I'll be shooting a video of that soon. I just have so much content right now to push that I have to be careful how much I put on the channel, so you guys still have a chance to watch it all. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments section below. Also, you'll be seeing a little bit more of this car, and you'll be seeing a little bit more of my son. I'm going to interview him. So anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks a lot. Have yourselves a great day now. Bye-bye.